So Frieren is about an elf whose lifespan far outlives her companions. But what makes Frieren different is that it deals with the trauma of it all. So Frieren attempts to investigate the nature of time and time perception, and I want to talk about that today. So Frieren is a rather new manga that's come out in the last couple of years. It was written by Kanehito Yamada and illustrated by Tsukasa Abe. Early on as this story unfolds, we see that Frieren grapples with the kind of extinguishing flame or the mortality of her companions. What comes of these experiences is her kind of social awkwardness when it comes to dealing with these emotions and kind of prescribing the right kind of empathy, both outward in how she presents herself to the public, but also inward, being that she's a hero of the realm. So the preface or the preamble to her kind of journey inward here is based on this meteor shower that happens once every 50 years. And as you can see here, they all talk about the majesty of it all, but Frieren's reaction to it all is a bit cold. You see, 50 years for her is something like 5 years. And so because of that, she says, hey, look, in 50 years, let's meet up and see this meteor shower from a better location. I guess if you wanted to zoom out and put yourself in her shoes, it'd be tantamount to kind of like hanging out with folks that only live 10 years. And while the volatility of a year in their life would be pretty immense, for you, that 1 year of exposure might seem kind of fleeting, might seem kind of futile. And to double down on this, the anime doesn't shy away from the story it wants to tell at all. It starts out with the adventurers returning to their hometown and being hailed as heroes. And so I'm really excited for Frieren because unlike the isekai that's so popular nowadays, this is a traditional high fantasy anime that has no kind of weird background elements of modernized folks traveling to other dimensions or anybody reincarnating from getting hit by a truck or falling asleep on a toilet. You get my point. So Frieren will air on September 29th, 2023, and the first episode should be a 2-hour-long special. And series like this, for better or for worse, sometimes are probably better served binged, and I think the 2-hour kind of upfront episode here kind of really alludes to that. Following this episode, the actual run itself takes place on October 6th, 2023, and that'll be your traditional kind of weekly updates. So the anime will be hosted on Crunchyroll, and the story takes place and should cover the first 9 episodes of the manga. And if you didn't know, the manga is now at like episode almost 100, I think, give or take. So the studio who's doing it is Studio Madhouse, and Evan Call is doing the music. And you can see that the score is super bold. Listen here. And if he sounds familiar, maybe the most recent, kind of most popular thing that he's done is Violet Garden. So if you're a big fan of that, then obviously his music is going to resonate with you. And I really think that the style here with the music, the kind of over-aggressive, again, bold use of music, as you can see here with this background, I think it'll really work. I think this anime will be served well with that kind of traditional music. So I really want to commend the art studio on really nailing down the art style and making it look almost exactly like the manga. And if you're new to anime, then one of the things that anime traditionally does really well is they go panel for panel, beat for beat a lot of the times. So we don't get like a different kind of version of a story where, when Westerners do a adaptation of a comic, it generally changes by a lot. That said, I think there's actually an improvement in the colors here, and honestly, it looks amazing. The backgrounds are washed and painterly, and the line work itself is super hyper accurate, just like the artist intended. As an artist myself, I think my art style is uniquely far on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to this type of art. This is hyper precise, but I think it's going to fit really well with the story. And so I'm really excited to see how this plays out. And of course, it could be that we're just seeing the best moments because trailer, but I'm really hopeful and it looks great here. So as a primer and some food for thought for the anime, I think 3 things are really important to kind of consider. The first is the absolute perception of time and lifespan in general. The second would be cultural perceptions regarding death, be it within our societies, Japan versus Mexico, etc. And then finally, kind of interspecies relationships. And I know that's not really a thing, but I want to kind of unpack a little bit of that, e.g. dwarves versus elves versus humans. So kind of the first way that we can think about this is the perception of time and lifespan. And on a philosophical basis, Henry Bergson, a French philosopher who's distinguished himself by kind of theorizing two different ways of looking at this. First is chronological or quantified, measured time. And then there's also lived, how we actually experience or feel time. See, the manga presents a stark contrast in how humans and elves, Frieren specifically, perceive time. See, Frieren with her long lifespan might be seeing this experience of time in a chronological quote-unquote manner initially, where years pass as mere moments. However, the death of her human comrades prompts a shift in the story and within her perspective. And I think this marked departure early on shifts her kind of perception from this chronological time to this lived or experienced time. So one of the things that the manga has always made me curious about is kind of the cultural perceptions of death. It's something that I knew about but haven't really explored. So I want to take a moment to kind of think about how this kind of transacts in our world and if there's any kind of parallels with Frieren. So in ancient Egyptian culture, Egyptians believed in an afterlife, of course. The continuation of existence after death was very serious to them. So serious, in fact, that death was just a transition. So the Book of the Dead is a collection of spells intended to assist a person's journey through this underworld, or duat, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, and into the afterlife. Obviously, you see this with the pharaohs and the pyramids, etc. So in Tibetan tradition, there's also a Book of the Dead, and this book is a guide for the dead during the state that intervenes death and the next rebirth, also known as bardo. It basically offers guidance on navigating these experiences to attain enlightenment or a favorable rebirth. So early on in Frieren, there are definitely moments where the characters reflect on their past lives, their legacies that they will leave, and the impact they'll certainly have on future generations. So I think it's worth kind of recognizing this and kind of following this along the story arc itself. So in Japanese culture, there's this ancestral worship and there's an Oban festival. So Japanese culture is obviously deep rooted with respect for ancestors. And so this festival kind of mirrors that. And the reason why I want to bring up Japanese culture here is because no matter how far you try to run away from it, I think there's going to be certainly Japanese cultural undertones and kind of, be it subtle, there's certainly a Japanese flavor to the way that the author is perceiving life and death here. And finally, just for something to contrast with all these other concepts, the Mexican Day of the Dead is an interesting concept that, celebrates and honors the deceased. So the idea of celebrating the lives of those who've passed on rather than mourning their departure is certainly unique. And I think given the multitude of cultures and races and species in this manga, I think it certainly will serve us to kind of zoom out and look at it from a broader lens. And finally, I want to talk about kind of interspecies relationships and kind of the exchanges they have within cross cultures here. And because elves live so much longer, they're certainly going to adopt a cultural relativism, if you will, a lens that allows them to perceive life and kind of life's givings a lot differently from the other species, and I think this plays a huge role in Frieren. So those are just some of my opinions and some of the key themes that I'm generally interested in when I'm trying to unpack a manga like this. So if you read the manga or just really excited about a brand new high fantasy anime, then just let me know what you think in the comments below. What did I miss and what should other folks be looking for when they're watching this anime? Thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon.